that looks better. Okay. Much better without that light. I've got a lamp. Redid my office area, and now I don't have that weird light over my head. Oh, feels so much better. All right, we are going to do our Friday close reading, not Little House. We're doing tracking time. So you want to find the tracking time paper, reading comprehension check sheet, and we're going to practice our close reading with our 3 reads. So the first time, remember, we are going to number our paragraphs. And let me find my paper. There it is, my paper clip, which holds my paper on the board so it doesn't flip around. So, first thing we do is number our paragraphs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's write our numbers next to them. All right, then we read through it and we write our gist statements that tell the main thing the paragraph is talking about, so we know where to go back and look up information later. Tracking time. On New Year's Day, we hang up a new calendar. We know it's the start of a new year. It will have 365 days, 52 weeks, or 12 months. If you do the math, that's more than 300 million seconds. But who decided to keep time this way? So, what is the first paragraph talking about? It's talking about calendar and how the calendar is organized into weeks and months. So, I'm going to write calendar. You do that too. And let's read the second paragraph. Humans began tracking time about 4,000 years ago. Ancient Greeks and Romans used a sundial. It measured time passing during the day. But how did they measure time at night or on cloudy days? The Romans solved that problem. They used a container called a clepsydra, or water clock. Water slowly dripped out of the container. Markings on the side showed the passing of time. So what is that paragraph talking about? It's talking about 4,000 years ago, using sundials and water clocks. So I think it's talking about, I'm going to write early clocks. Early clocks. And remember, right above paragraph 2, gist statements are no more than 3 or 4 words. We're not writing sentences, just enough for us to know that, oh, that's the paragraph to look at to find an answer. Number 3, in the 300s, Roman Emperor Constantine ruled that a week would be 7 days. Before that, the Roman week had 8 days. Very weird. Constantine was a Christian. He wanted to follow the example of the 7-day creation week from the Bible. Well, that's easy. That one's talking about weeks. And I'm going to put -7 days, because that's talking about how the week was organized. Week, 7 days for the first time. Paragraph 4. It took until the 1700s before inventors began making clocks. Some clocks kept track of minutes and hours. Others kept track of months of the year, signs of the zodiac, and phases of the moon. Very interesting. So that one's talking about types of clocks. Not early clocks, but types of clocks. So that's paragraph 4. And now we have one more paragraph. Time tracking became more precise in the 1950s and 1960s. That's when scientists learned about atoms and lasers. They used these ideas to measure time to the fraction of a second. So now we keep very accurate time. So I'm going to write accurate time keeping. Accurate time keeping. Okay, so once I've numbered my paragraphs, read each one, and written a gist statement, then I do my second close read. And for this one, you need your highlighter. And I'm going to read it all the way through the second time, just like you should do on your own. And you're going to highlight any words that you're not sure of the meaning. Ready? Tracking time. On New Year's Day, we hang up a new calendar. We know it's the start of a new year. It will have 365 days, 52 weeks, or 12 months. If you do the math, that's more than 300 million seconds. But who decided to keep time this way? Humans began tracking time about 4,000 years ago. Ancient Greeks and Romans used a sundial. It measured time passing during the day. But how did they measure time at night or on cloudy days? The Romans solved that problem. They used a container called a clepsydra, or water clock. Water slowly dripped out of the container. Markings on the side showed the passing of time. In the 300s, Roman Emperor Constantine ruled that a week would be 7 days. Before that, the Roman week had 8 days. Constantine was a Christian. He wanted to follow the example of the 7-day creation week from the Bible. It took until the 1700s before inventors began making clocks. Some clocks kept track of minutes and hours. Others kept track of months of the year, signs of the zodiac, and phases of the moon. Time tracking became more precise in the 1950s and 1960s. That's when scientists learned about atoms and lasers. They used these ideas to measure time to the fraction of a second. Now, remember, we do not highlight people's names. You cannot look those up. They are not words that are found in a dictionary, and you know that they're a person's name. So we would never highlight things like Constantine. You could highlight clepsydra, but I would also highlight water clock right next to it so you know what it means, because that is an odd ancient word. Now, at this point in time, if we were at school, we would stop and we would grab our dictionaries and we would work in pairs and we would look up any words that we did not know. So you can pause the video, use a dictionary if you have one at home, or use a device to Google different words and find out what they mean. There probably weren't very many words that you highlighted on here. Definitely the clepsydra. But other than that, I can't really think of any that would have been real difficult. Maybe the word precise. But that's going to be up to you. Then you would start the video back up again if you need to pause it and look up words and move on to the third read. Remember, for the third read, we read the question, think about which paragraphs are about what. We go back and look in the paragraph, and then we find the answer. We may not necessarily reread every single paragraph. It'll depend on what our questions are. So, number 1 says, what's the overall structure of this text? Is it sequential, cause and effect, problem and solution, or compare and contrast? So we have to think about what those words mean. Sequential means, does it start at the beginning of time and move through year by year? Cause and effect, does it have something that makes other things happen? Problem and solution, does it state a problem and then tell how it was solved? Or does it compare something with something else and tell how they are alike and different? So tracking time, sort of sequential. We started with 4,000 years, early clocks, weeks or 7 days, types of clocks, accurate timekeeping. But that first paragraph doesn't really talk about before early clocks. So I'm going to rule out sequential. Cause and effect. Well, it doesn't really have something that started and made other things happen. Problem and solution. It talks about how we got a calendar, that there was a problem and I needed to keep track of time, and this is how they did it throughout history. So, Definitely not compare and contrast. That's off. So it is stating a problem and a solution. So we're going to circle C, but it is also in sequential order. So I'm going to circle both A and C. This particular text uses two of our reading skill organizational tools. So circle both A and C. Then, how did the Romans solve the problems of sundials that only worked on sunny days? Oh, so that's early clock. So we know to go back and look at paragraph 2, and we are going to read it, and then the pencil tells us we have to write a complete sentence. Humans began tracking time about 4,000 years ago. Ancient Greeks and Romans used a sundial. It measured time passing during the day. But how did they measure time at night or on cloudy days? The Romans solved that problem. They used a container called a clepsydra, or water clock. Water slowly dripped out of the container. Markings on the side showed the passing of time. So, how did they solve their problem? They used a clepsydra, or a water clock. So that's our sentence. They used a, because we don't just write the name of it, we use the whole sentence. Container called a clepsydra or water clock. All right, so there's our sentence. They used a container called a clepsydra or water clock, and that's how they solved their problem. Hold that just a little bit longer. All right, if you don't have that copied, you can pause and then come back to us. Number 3, where did the idea of a 7-day week come from? Oh, weeks, 7 days, paragraph 3. We're going to go read that. In the 300s, the answer must be there. Roman Emperor Constantine ruled that a week would be 7 days. Before that, the Roman week had 8 days. Constantine was a Christian. He wanted to follow the example of the 7-day creation week from the Bible. So where did the idea of a 7-day week come from? The Emperor Constantine wanted to follow the 7-day week in the Bible. So he came up with it. The Emperor Constantine. And then we have to, of course, include why. Wanted to follow the 7-day week in the Bible. I ran out of room. All right, the Emperor Constantine wanted to follow the 7-day week in the Bible. And that was easy to find because we had marked our paragraphs. We didn't have to reread through the whole thing again. So far, we've only had to look at 2 paragraphs. All right, our last question. What name is given to clocks that track signs of the zodiac or phases of the moon? How can you tell? All right, so we have paragraph 4, types of clocks. It took until the 1700s before inventors began making clocks. Some clocks kept track of minutes and hours. Others kept track of months of the year, signs of the zodiac, and phases of the moon. What name is given to clocks that track signs of the zodiac or phases of the moon? Well, it doesn't really tell us that, does it? That's a weird question. Well, can we answer that question? That would be, we don't know. I mean, we could look it up on Google, couldn't we? But the actual telling here doesn't tell us exactly what those are called. So we would have to say the article doesn't tell us what they are called. All right, so if it asks a question about something that is not in there, we would have to say the article doesn't tell us what they are called. I mean, you shouldn't ask a question if it's not in the reading, if you're only supposed to find your answers in the reading. But sometimes they do that. So we're not going to write, that's what we're going to write for that one. And we've done that kind of thing before. All right. So all you need to do is show me your finished copy by taking a picture of it. And that'll be something you turn in next week. And back to Little House. We should finish up Little House next week. So, see you later.